Welcome back, YouTube. MTG Joe here. We're checking in for the first installment of Ixalan's release of the best decks in Historic Best of One. As always on the channel, we cover every format, ideally on Arena, best of one, best of three each week, looking at the best decks statistically speaking in terms of win rate on the ladder. This video is Historic Best of One. If you're looking for Standard, Explorer, whatever, check out the video playlist. You can find whatever you need there. I'm going to start putting out new Ixalan content now that it's hit a week. We can play the Eternal formats. I'll get a standard best of three out as well, and we can start working towards that. And then starting on Sunday, it's going to be regular rotation of the videos now that we have kind of succinct data. So the big thing over this past weekend is we had the Mythic qualifier, and it was Historic best of three format. So we got both the new release of Ixalan and then a chance to try out a bunch of new stuff to see what's working. And there was kind of a new archetype that came out both in Pioneer as well as Historic, and that is the Discover combos. Slightly different in the Historic format because, and we'll take a look, we have the Commander Dragon, or Dinosaur, that also impacts it, but there's some best of three lists that are fairly similar to what I would think a best of one list would be, so we'll take a look there. So as always, we get the data from UntappedGG, what you see on the screen, aggregates your win rates with other users. There's a whole bunch of cool stats, card choices, stuff of that nature. So if you want to get started with Untapped, it's a really useful tool up to your game. Link is in the video description. Lets them know that I sent you along. But I'll paste all these deck lists, timestamp them, the usual deal. And as always, if you do enjoy this type of content, like, comment, subscribe, helps out the channel for free. So popularity of the day, and then we'll look at the win rates of the day. So popularity doesn't necessarily correlate to win rate percentage, what people are playing. And right now, Historic Best of One, it's kind of taken by two decks. We have Izzet Wizards, that's all the way up to 36%. Big jump week over week. We had it at 26%, and now it's up to 36%. And the deck that's kind of been popping up the last week or so is the Geist Combo, the Leyline Geist Combo. Two different versions of the deck, but really the only difference of the color is one's playing the green Leyline for wild cards. You just need the Leylines, doesn't really matter which ones you're playing. It's another deck that's at 32% of the field. So the deck is very linear, and Wizards is one of the few decks very similar to like a lot of the other combo decks in the format, where Wizards is one of the fastest decks. So it can inherently race these kind of cheat out combo decks. Following that up, we have representation from Mono Green Devotion, Elves, the various affinity piles, Dredge, and Gruul Goblins. So kind of just seeing a pretty stark rise in the Geist decks, pretty much normalizing around the same point, but they're very similar in terms of deck. There's like, when I was looking at the list, like we'll take a look here, 20,000 matches for today, gold to mythic just because it's the first week, but like Geist Combo, Geist Combo, Geist Combo, Geist Combo, Geist Combo. So just lots of Geist combos. There's a bunch of different configurations of the deck itself. Kind of going from there. Sorry, my dog's still recovering from her leg injury, and when she takes her pills, she kind of goes crazy. So we are jumping in, and the highest win rate deck is said Geist Combo at 70.1%. So with this deck here, if you haven't seen it, basically what you're trying to do is mulligan into a hand of 3 cards. Ideally, so you can mull till as low as 3 cards, and what you want is a Leyline in your opening hand. Any Leyline, doesn't really matter. The whole point is to cheat it into play for 0 mana in your opening. The nice thing is you incidentally do have some Leylines which do work out pretty well. Things like Leyline of the Void incidentally can hose Dredge. Leyline of Sanctity helps buy some time against like the Thoughtseize, stuff like that. But for the most part, you are cheating in one of these Leylines. So you have your Leyline in play, you go to your turn, you have Fragment Reality, and then that's pretty much the 2-card combo that you need. Land, of Leyline, and Fragment Reality. You don't need more than 3 cards to win with this deck. Ideally, you have more, but it's not necessarily the case. So what you do, you target the Leyline with the Fragment Reality. It always finds you guys the same draft. Your opponent's now in a situation where they can't really deal with a hexproof creature. Now, it is only a 2 power, so it can easily get chumped, but what you're doing in this deck is giving it things like flying, with the Arcane Flight or Griffspoon. You have pump effects with Ethereal Armor, Staggering Insight, Sentinel's Eye. So you're just playing like an Aura's package on it. Make it very big. You also slip out the back for protection on your Geist. What you can actually do too is when your Geist attacks, because the Angel leaves at the end of combat, you can go into full control mode and slip out of the back your token, and then it stays into play as a 5/5. So that can increase your clock quite significantly. It also can be used to get rid of blockers out of your opponent's side of the battle. It's a very like linear deck. It's effective. I will say if you need to craft some of these cards, it's kind of boring. I played it for maybe a dozen games. There's a lot of it is just mulliganing, and you're just, some of the games you're just going to lose, like a mulligan to one-on-one game. Sometimes it's just going to happen. Other times you get the nuts. So it's kind of a glass cannon combo, but I find it a little bit boring. If you have the cards, try it out. It's effective. I don't know necessarily if I would recommend it. It's, like I said, the play patterns aren't really fun, kind of all things considered. There's very little player agency at times with this deck. Moving on, we go to Izzet Wizards, 70.4%. So kind of the staggering thing here is both decks are representing about a third of the meta distribution right now, and both are very high win rates, kind of tied to that. So the Wizards deck is pretty much fairly tuned at this point. Symmetry Sage is the engine of the deck. Soulscar Mage, this version here, is only playing 2 sleight of hands, opting to go with a Spell Pierce and a Strangle. Strangle helps in the mirror, giving you an additional 1 mana removal spell when you're on the draw. Because the big thing is, like, your opponent goes turn 1 Symmetry Sage, you don't have access to Wizard's Lightning, and your Play with Fires don't kill it. The Strangle always helps kind of in this situation to deal with their turn 1 play. But the core of the deck is pump up your teams with Symmetry Sage, Balmor, Lechior, Dreadhorde Arcanist, flashback things, Flame of Anor, just really flexible. Removal, draw cards, bunch of burn in the deck, and then like haste damage out of nowhere with Reckless Charge. This deck, it's not unusual for it to deal like 15 plus damage in 1 turn cycle. Jengantha Companion here as well. So we go to Mono Green Devotion. Nothing too super innovative. This one's at 62%. I did see some versions of the deck play the new Green God, the Osier, just to put things into play. The rest of the list was a little odd. Like, it was still like mid 50% win rate, just from the power of mono green, but it was playing like 2 Gaia's Blessings main, so just a weird configuration. It's when like people lose to mill once and they suddenly make their deck worse by playing Gaia's Blessing. There's also not like too much Kethis in best of 1, so you don't necessarily need to worry about getting milled out that way there. And in that case, like, just play 1 Gaia's Blessing. But this deck here, you're just playing a bunch of ramp cards. The Nykthos, tap some taps with like Kiora, generate a whole bunch of mana, use Karn as a wish board. We see a Cityscape Leveler main, as well as the Hollow Henge Wrangler, which just kind of lets you throw away lands to get just beasts later game. So converts your forest into more gas, all things considered. Because it's a Karn board, you just have hate pieces, artifact enchantment hate, activated abilities, turn off their activated abilities, blow up their lands with Karn, combo hate, removal, God Pharaoh statues attacks effect, and then the Cityscape Leveler is more removal. This one's an interesting choice, I think, right now in the meta. The Wizards matchup's pretty bad, and can't imagine like, it's a little iffy against this Geist deck. Like, this helps with the flying ability, but may just be a race, all things considered, because you don't really have a clean answer to Geist in this configuration of the wish board. You then go to Dimir Dredge, 61%. So this is a deck that's now featuring 4 Ancient Ones. So quite a bit downside. This doesn't actually do anything when it's on the battlefield until there are 8 or more permanents in your graveyard. But thanks to just the inherent nature of this deck, putting cards into your graveyard naturally, this is a pretty easy way to have a 2-mana 8/8 into play. And then late game just kind of lets you draw, discard, kind of bin your cards you don't need, and then enable more mill, all things considered. So you have things like Secret Keeper, Otherworldly Gaze, Stitcher Supplier, put cards into your graveyard, the Glimpse the Unthinkable, and then what you're trying to do is just play lands, have like Bloodghast come back. This one's on no copies of Silver Smoke Ghoul. It's usually kind of like the worst card, because like it only triggers really off the Creeping Chill. it's fine, but like having Ancient One might be just a more powerful threat, all things considered. Creeping Chill is still a good card because it just represents a big life swing. This version's also configured its mana base to be on 5 islands for the Wonder. I do think with just the number of swamps as well, you can kind of fix these points. So maybe trim on the swamps and then play further numbers of these. I can see the islands being relevant for Wonder, but you also only have a single copy, so some mana based configurations, but interesting to see the Ancient One kind of get featured in this Dimir deck. So for the next few decks, we're going to take a look at like best of 3 lists that did pretty well and that could be easily ported over for best of 1. So this player here, Tarkin Cock, went 6-2 in the historic qualifier day 1, so almost made day 2, and they are playing the new Amalia combo. So Wild Growth Walker, Amalia. So if you're unfamiliar, Amalia and Wild Growth Walker is pseudo infinite life. How it works is you need to trigger a life gain somehow. So in this case here, you're either doing Lunarch Veteran or Synod Scout, which triggers the life gain, or Prosperous Innkeeper. Amalia then explores because you gain life, which triggers the Wild Growth Walker, which gains you life, which triggers Amalia. So you can keep doing that, and Amalia puts counters on it each time up to 20 power. And then once it hits 20 power, it destroys all other creatures. Now the thing is, you can give Indestructible to the Wild Growth Walker, and it's basically a draw because it never dies, and you just infinitely gain life. So that's something to consider. You can technically draw the game, but also it screws you up. The ideal thing to do is do it on your opponent's end step with things like Collect a Company or Court of Calling to kind of untap with a big creature and kill them that way there. Fiend Artisan helps you find stuff. Juggernaut Peddler, Extraction Specialist lets you rebuy. There's some sideboard options as well if you want to play it in best of 3, so I'll port over this list as well for you if you're interested. The other deck is this player, MTG Arena, had a crazy run, went 14-0 both, so 7-0, 7-0 both days of the qualifier, made it, and they are playing the Discover combo. That is a very poor image. Okay, so basically, for those unfamiliar, how the combo works, and I apologize for the quality, but I'll paste the deck list. It's easier to explain. You're playing a Karuga Companion. Basically, casting Geological Appraiser cascades into either Glasspool Mimic, which copies more Geological Appraisers, or it goes into Eldritch Evolution. Eldritch Evolution, you sack the Geological Appraiser, you get Trumpeting Carnosaur, which then cascades into either the Geological Appraiser, more copies of Eldritch Evolution, that can then get Carnosaur, you can copy Carnosaur, or it gets Pantalansa, the Sun Favored, which is discovered based on dinosaurs, so it comes into play and kind of just goes through the chain. What you're ideally trying to do is keep chaining until you can get a large enough board, and then off your last Eldritch Evolution, you're going to chain into Doomscar Tyrant, which is basically just like your creatures get plus power and haste until end of turn. You can also go into the new Galta to dump cards from your hand if you need it that way there, if some of your combo pieces are in your hand. You ramp up with things like Magma Opus, Creative Outburst, or Elemental Masterpiece, just 2 mana discard to create treasure. So think of it as 2 mana like ramp in the fact. And then Bedecked is just here as some removal. So it's kind of an all-in combo. You could disrupt the combo by killing the Geological Appraiser while the trigger is on the stack. That way they can't Eldritch Evolution or clone into it. So it does have fizzle potential, but it is basically a 1-card combo in the sense that you cast the 1 card, they don't interact, or they're tapped out, they're dead that turn as well. So then we go to, this one's from Epic Gerardo. They went 6-2 on day 2, so they missed out by 1. And this is an update to the Ninjas list. The biggest thing, just seeing for Sheoldred's Edict in the main, so this is actually quite helpful versus all the Geist meta. So it's kind of the same Ninja deck that we've seen in the past. Got rid of Bowmaster, playing the Sheoldred's Edict. A lot of disruption, but this is kind of a tempo-oriented deck. If you want to see this deck in action, there's basically a line where you get out a copy of Silver Fur if you have 2,000 Face Ninjas in hand because of the cost reduction with the Silver Fur's ability. You could keep ninjaing the 2,000 Face Shadows back and forth to your hand for 1 blue mana. So each iteration of 1 blue mana basically gets you an additional copy of Silver Fur tapped and attacking. which gets you more lords into play. So it's kind of like a pseudo combo in the deck. It's much easier to see. There's a video on my playlist for Historic. You can check it out. It's like the first game that we do the combo. Otherwise, it's backed up by the Retrofitter, Foundry, Ornithopter. This is also a Shapeshifter, so a Ninja and a Thopter, all things considered. We then go to Orzhov Humans. This is from Lazy Guga. They also had a really nice run into Mythic and a good performance over the weekend. And this is just an update to the Humans list. So notably, we got Cavern of Souls for the deck, so uncounterable in there. And then this version of the deck still has a lot of those tax elements, Esper Sentinels, Thalias to slow down your opponents. Thalia's Lieutenant puts counters on your thing. Kudro is a Lord, some Fatal Pushes. Jarina gives you the ability to get indestructible as well as eats away at the graveyard. Ranger Captain of Eos lets you tutor any of your 1-drops, including 1-ofs in Giant Killer and Recruitment Officer, and then can be sacked to give like a pseudo your opponent can't cast non-creature spells. So this actually like disrupts the combo for like the Discover combo, for example, because they can't Eldritch Evolution from there. Skyclave Apparition is removal, Adelins as attacker, and then Inquisitor Captain can find any of these cards. Mana base, you got Cave of Frost Dragon, Iganjo, Castle Ardenvale with some dual lands mixed in. The one thing that you might want to consider, there's actually the Horizon land in lieu of Caves of Koilos. The Horizon land just provides similar, it's always going to ping you for a damage, but it will allow you to have some card draw built into your mana base as well. So just something to consider there. Then we go to Selesnya Enchantress by Caro. This one here, I think went, they got at least into the play-in qualifier and best of one. So this is a 9-live Solemnity combo. And basically how it works, if you're unfamiliar, 9 lives with a Solemnity out means that your opponent can't deal damage to you. You can still take life loss, but you can't deal damage. So this kind of wins against things like Wizards, Geist, stuff like that. Seedry lets you, or Sithis lets you draw cards whenever you cast a enchantment. Same with Enchantress's Presence. You have Ramp and Utopia Sprawl. Sanctum Weaver can add a whole bunch of mana. Lots of ways to kind of generate or have removal, Baffling End, Ossification, Banishing Light. Sterling Grove gives all your other enchantments shrouds, so they can't be targeted, and also lets you tutor for any pieces, including the Hallowed Haunting, which is one of your win conditions, along with the Destiny Spinner, which is a mana sink that you can animate your lands. Pretty clean list there. And then lastly, Boros Thopters. This one's from Scotty Fisher. So this is another deck that got 7 wins in an event, but the Boros Thopters are always hovering. So a little bit interesting decisions in this particular list. We see the 2 Shrapnel Blast, only a single copy of Toolcraft Exemplar. And this actually, someone pointed out last week, this has been errata to deal 5 damage to any target, not just Planeswalkers. Like, it hits Planeswalkers now too. Strangle Main for like the Wizards matchup, Methods Enthusiasm, just some more removal that can stack the damage or the power, light up the stage with some card advantage, Portable Holes, Shadow Spears. So basically with this, you're a Retrofitter Foundry, lots of ways to sack the artifacts and kind of get some value that way there to change them into 4/4. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying. We'll catch you next time.